Alright, so my name is Jack, and this is my computer science history project. So I interviewed two people, my grandma on my mom's side of the family and my dad. And the first question I asked them was what their definition of technology is. And I thought it was really interesting that my grandma skipped right to calling it something electronic. It uses a binary choice. She's talking about, like, code, like we learned at the beginning, the binary numeral system. But my dad was much more general. He said something that helps processes or that makes some action easier or more efficient. Then I asked them what piece of technology did they want when they were my age. They both decided they had. Right. Okay, well that's okay. Alright, hi. My name is Jack, and this is my computer science history project. So I interviewed my grandma from my mom's side of the family and my dad. And the first question I asked them was what their definition of technology is. And my grandma skipped right to something that was electronic. She said something electronic that uses a binary choice. She's talking about code. But my dad was much more general. He said something that helps processes or that makes some action easier or more efficient. Like a spoon could be considered technology under that definition. That was interesting that my grandma skipped right to something electronic, and my dad was more general about it. Then I asked them what pieces of electronic technology they had when they were my age, and they both had telephones, landline telephone with a cord, TV, small TV, radio, and a typewriter. And then by the time my dad came along, he had Apple II computers, but he didn't have them at home. He also had a VCR and stereo equipment. Apparently, when my dad got his first VCR, it was very exciting, and his dad gave the family a choice of cable or VCR. And they chose a VCR because they liked the concept of being able to watch what they wanted, when they wanted, because there was no DVR, or like if you missed a show, you missed it. There was no, so I thought that was interesting. Then I asked what were the pieces of technology that they wish they had when they were my age. And they both had trouble with this question, mostly because all they knew of back then was the technology that had already been invented. So thinking about what they would have wanted, I guess gave them a lot of difficulty. Makes sense. But I pushed them to say something, and they eventually said cell phone. Then I asked them how much they watched TV. And I came to the conclusion that they gave different answers, but it sounded like it was pretty similar amounts of time. My grandma watched TV after dinner every night, and my dad said about 5 hours a week. He was also big into sports, and they always watched Monday Night Football, so that's 3 hours. It's not like a show, but I guess you're in front of the TV. TV's on. So, yeah. The number of channels that was available back then, and that said 5. You had channel 2, 4, 7, 9, and 31. And then my grandma said 3. The big ones were NBC, CBS, and ABC. And then eventually channel 9, the public station, came into existence. So instead of watching as much TV as we probably do now, my dad and grandma had different ways of passing the time. My dad was big into sports. He played basketball, football, tennis, biked a lot, and hung out with friends. I feel like there was more face-to-face social interaction back then. My grandma had an even longer list. She rode bikes, roller skated, they built forts, played in the creek, they lived right by a creek, they spent time talking to friends, they walked to houses, they walked to school, they walked more often than we do now. They played with their flexi, which apparently was like a sled with wheels, I guess. And they traveled a lot more, like on the weekends they'd go up to their other house, and then during the summer they would ride horseback or swim. Yeah. So the first time my grandma used a computer was in 1973. She took this programming class. And later on, she used it for teaching, but it was never really gaming or anything like that. My dad said he used it for gaming and a little bit of programming, not even for school. I thought that was interesting. The computer usage today. My grandma reads news on her computer, emails, uses Facebook, uses it for business, finance, taxes, that type of stuff. My dad was pretty similar. Work. Yeah. So a couple things that I found surprising is that my grandma watched as much TV as she did. I didn't expect her to be in front of the TV every single night. That's probably more than she does now, which is very interesting. I also stated, as I stated before, I thought it was interesting that my grandma defined technology as something solely electronic. The addition of only 2 channels in about 25 years that separated the time period that we were talking about, 25, 30 years or so. I thought that was also interesting because since, just in our lifetimes, I feel like there have been the addition of much more than 2 channels, and it took a while for that to kind of catch on. I also thought it was interesting that my grandma seemed more active than my dad. My dad was pretty active, but my grandma had a longer list. I'm not sure if that's if that can be proportional to today, if I'm doing fewer things than my dad, or... Yeah, okay, so that's my screencast. Thanks.